You came, what, 25 years ago to US from Poland?
I prefer to call it 20-something.
20-something.
It really depresses me when I pinpoint it to the exact number, and it's always more than I think.
Why did you leave in the first place?
I was plagued by fate. You see, this is another thing about my life. I tend to view it as a chain of events that I have very little to do with. I was invited, that's where we met, in Aspen, Colorado, for the IDCA, the International Design Conference. And Gilles Debure, whom you met there, the French critic, who was responsible for selecting Europeans for the conference, selected me for that year. And I was actually the youngest participant. And also I was from behind the Iron Curtain because it was still in place then. So it was exciting. But I came here as a designer, illustrator, not as a painter, as I would like to be viewed now. You know, it had to wait. I came here as an artist. I always thought that doesn't really matter.
So you didn't leave for political reasons? You
Not
left
at all,
because
no.
It was time.
It was just, you know, I mean, it was so fortunate that it happened like that. I didn't have to become a political emigre, which I wouldn't feel comfortable. And obviously, if there was a good reason for it, I would have become one, and probably, you know, my life would have been slightly different.
You said just a little while ago that you first were an illustrator, designer, and then you became, I guess, called a fine artist. What is the difference? Let's start there.
The very reason that you are asking this question means that you, because that's important, that you view it in that way, because you can afford to do it like that. I think that there's a very strong animosity between the two worlds, you know, and I've experienced it on my very skin only too well. The applied arts, which are in this country called by even a more brutal term, commercial art, would forbid one to enter the fine art world, so to speak. You know, I'm trying to prove the opposite. You see, I never really accepted this division, only because I never thought of myself as anything but an artist. You know, I made my name as a graphic artist, and nobody would want to see me in any other way.
But also, I think that you were doing many like political, with a little knife, you were making a statement in most of those illustrations, right? Which
I couldn't easily do in a painting. You know, yeah. I mean, it was a completely different story, and the world of publishing and magazines seemed so much more lively and really having to do with life, you know. And I had obviously a very naive premonition that I can bring about some change, that I can add my little voice, you know, squeaky as it was, because my main character, but the only character that I created that became immensely popular was Dudi the bird. And you know, I mean, it looked like an aged hippie.
Let's talk about your work today, because you've made a total change.
You know, I really lead a schizophrenic existence as an artist, because on the one hand I was doing the commercial work to support our lifestyle, which became sort of extravagant within the limits, you know, but it's an expensive environment that we live in New York, and that was a very easy and sort of clean way to do it, because I didn't have to, you know, have any go-betweens. I was in high demand, and I knew that this is the work that sells, and it was very simple and easy. Of course, it prevented me from throwing myself at the gallery world and really looking for a dealer and all that, which seemed, compared to that sweet little existence, a horrific world full of sharks and you know, forbidding territory. So I neglected it for a long time, thinking that it doesn't really matter because the work is being created and that's what matters. So there was not ever a distinct crossover point when I suddenly said, okay, now I'm becoming an artist and I don't want to hear from the so-called clients, you know. There's a saying that I cherish, and it was always uttered by Elizabethan minister Cecil, who would say "Sero sed serio" in Latin, which translates into "late but in earnest." And I always applied it to myself because a long time ago, Roland Topor, a French artist, a good friend of mine, told me, "Don't worry because we never retire." We, meaning artists. You don't have to be in such a rush because we have all our lives. Of course, they could be short. This we have no control over, but there's something about it that appeals to me tremendously, that I don't have to do everything at once. I don't have to spell everything out in the beginning because then there's nothing left. It's not concerted effort. I don't really plan it like that, but it seems to be the nature of things in my case. So things are unfolding. You know, I obviously have some part in it because I make them, but somehow there is always this new thing coming that comes out of the other thing, but it's not to say that there is not one, you know, I think that every artist is doing the same thing all over again. However, styles can change and the attitudes can change and the approach to things can change. And in my case, I was always attracted to figuration, of course, and being a natural humorist and observer of human condition, I always had a keen and a somewhat nasty eye for things human, you know, and I like to see men in distress. I could never become a portrait artist because nobody would want to have portraits done by me because I could not be flattering in them, you know.
So this all enters into the assemblage, which you're doing now.
Actually, again, it's a parallel thing, but it somehow took over, you know. And for the first time in my life, I've faced a body of work that is very different from anything else I've ever done before. However, it comes straight from collage, which was always my favorite, one of my favorite mediums. And somehow I felt that this is so appropriate for today, because we live in a culture that is you know, this whole deconstruction of deconstruction of deconstruction. Everything has been done already, and we are no longer educated, you know. Kids don't know anything about what happened 20 years ago, so they can pick things as fresh that for us are somebody else's work. And it all is such a mix. So all the trash that was in my drawers, in my boxes, and all the crippled things that I collected, all the broken things, suddenly came to life, you know. They started finding its right spot on some surface. And the surface, I decided that I have to give myself some kind of frame, that something has to be controllable or controlled in this work. And it was the board. I just, you know, ordered a number of square boards of plywood, which became this background thing to which I could attach things with force. You know, I could nail them, screw them, and drill through it. Brutalized paper. I suddenly started finding a lot of excitement in treating paper, which is probably the most widely used medium in my life so far, and I revere paper, you know, and I've went through all the stages of wanting to hug it and kiss it, and the Japanese papers and the French, to the point where I think, hey, enough of that. It's turning into a fetish. I want to be brutal with it, and I started drilling holes through paper or picking up crumbled tracing paper and using it as material. And suddenly, you know, I realized that it all becomes something else. A torn drawing, something that I didn't know what to do with, you know, like an unfinished piece of art, could become part of this assemblage. Somebody said, one of the gallery owners, and I think it's so funny that he mentioned Kienholz, and I went to show him my work and said, this is the best of your work. Naturally, I didn't become part of his group, because this is another thing about galleries today. Every gallery seems to have a rooster that is closed forever. It's very hard to become a new kid in the pack, you know, because they seem that they have enough. Anyway, it also has to do with you know, creating work on the computer, which we haven't even mentioned here, but it also is part of the curriculum. Something that I resented for a long time, and once again later, but in earnest, I obviously started spending more time with it. And it's a wonderful medium for collage and creating things that, throwing things together and you know, just making them happen there in this non-existing space.
Is assemblage collage with dimension?
Exactly. This is the only word I could find to describe it, because, you know, I wish I could find a more wholesome word for
Invent one.
Maybe I will, but I don't want to, you know, usually those words are very pretentious. A painting is a good word, you know. A drawing is a good word. We need well, French had a word, so we have to use it. But it's, yes, the third dimension, of course, is something that I always missed on a flat surface. There's something in recycling of objects that could never be replicated in any other form, because I could draw it or paint it, you know. I mean, I wouldn't want to put myself through the effort, because I think it's pointless, you know. I think realism is a certain value that has its place in time, but the illusion that one can create with the third dimension, treating the work as you know, I think as a painter, I always begin with a drawing, you know, those are the founding elements of my nature, but the discipline that I was trying to get away from, you know, the architect's first 2 years, the grids, the perspective, the correctness, you know, was always annoying me. And all my life, I was trying to fight it in me. And I was always, you know, best when I could stop, or something would stop me halfway through the piece, you know. If I had the time given to finish it completely, I would not do such a great job on it as if I would be interrupted. And a lot of times Magda would walk into my studio and see something I was doing, didn't say anything, but later she would tell me, gosh, I wish I had told you then to stop, because hours later she comes in and it's all, there was like too much in it, you know. And so now I am in a state of mind, and maybe this is also the time of my life, you know, when I think I've seen enough, maybe not enough, but a lot, where I can afford to be relaxed about things. And I really value simplicity the most. I think I've been very exuberant, and I've done things that were cascading and exploding, and people would always say, I love your colors, oh, the colors are so great. But now I think, you know, to hell with colors. I like, you know, muted gray with traces of tar in it, you know. I really, and even Magda, my most faithful supporter and critic, because, you know, she is the first one to see it, and a lot of times she doesn't like what I do, and it, you know, it creates a tension. It's something that she can't follow anymore, and I see it as a good sign for me, you know, because I'm not pleasing her. It means that I'm not doing anything to please anybody.
Except yourself.
It's a very difficult, well, sometimes I don't even know, because I think, isn't it too horrid? But why did I do it? You know, and I really rely on my instinct and my intuition. I think those are the only real things. I don't want to remember what I was told and what I learned. And this is also why I, you know, I went through the period of drawing with my left hand and with my eyes closed. This is really one of the most interesting, intriguing experiences, which is like a therapy for me, you know. I had created a series of portraits. I call them portraits from pre-memory. A little pretentious term, but no other exists. What I mean by it is that when I close my eyes and I have a sketchbook or a piece of paper in front of me, I'm really very quickly beginning to almost understand where I'm at, you know, on the surface. I mean, I go like this, and I think if I spent more time, I could probably draw a fairly precise object or a portrait. Usually I focus on faces, which I wouldn't want to happen. I like the fact that I'm lost. I don't know where I am at. And it lasts only a short while, so I can't do it for, say, half an hour. But I'm trying to, you know, do something which is probably the closest one can get to the state of the very basic, very elementary communion with the object, or whatever one is trying to depict, you know. So this all leads to that one final piece, which would be simplicity at its outmost and almost no color, something that would make you think, wow, what the hell is he trying to say here? But whatever it is, and whatever it means, there is something in it, you know, like a nail nailed in the middle of a piece of paper. I don't know, rust. Rust is intriguing to me.
Well, whatever it is and whatever you do next, it will be enormously successful. Thank you, Andrzej, for talking to us.
Well, thank you, Lyn, for plucking me out of oblivion.